How did you break through and overcome those challenges?
Because part of financial planning is being able to offer everything. This is not learned overnight. It's learned through experiences. And experiences also take time.
What's one habit that has helped you succeed in your professional life?
Patience. You got to be patient in this industry.
One piece of advice that you would give your younger self
Oh, to be patient.
to be.
You
Hey,
know,
everyone. Welcome to the said Real Talk Corner, the space where Latino professionals can come together to learn, grow, and elevate one another. And every episode, we'll talk with amazing people from our industry and hear their stories, their lessons, and experiences. And our podcast is about community and connection. When we share what we know and help each other, we make the whole profession stronger. Today, I'm excited to bring on a friend of mine, a colleague that I met at FPA Ancestor Summit, Freddy Garcia. Freddy is a vice president of Life Frame Wealth Management and over 25 years of experience, super knowledgeable, and I'm excited to have you here with us. Freddie, let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about your upbringing, a little bit about where you came from, and how you kind of stumbled upon this profession.
Sure. Well, thanks, Guillermo. And, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. I think about the way we met, and it really was through SARE because we were both longtime FPA members.
Yeah,
And we had not met. And it took, Sarah to actually bring us together, you being in LA and me being in Chicago. So it was nice that, now we have that shared bond experience. And again, it all happened through Sarah, right?
yeah.
So even though we did have the commonality of being both CFPs and being FPA members. So I really appreciate that. And I hope people understand the benefit of what a smaller community like Sarah can do to cause
Hmm.
that. And, now we get to share our stories. I appreciate earlier hearing, you're a new father and hearing those baby stories. My kids are all grown up now. So I remember those days. And
Yeah, that's a throwback.
yeah, that is a throwback. And, speaking of throwback, I think about my beginnings, being an immigrant family from Mexico, from the state of Jalisco and coming up here and, the family settling up in the south side of Chicago. And the area that we settled, everybody was like us. Everybody spoke Spanish. And the fact is that, to this day, even though my parents came up here a long time ago, our family came here. My dad actually came up earlier here. He came actually here in 1957 as a migrant worker. But because he's always been, we've always been surrounded by a Hispanic community. To this day, them being in their age, they still don't speak English. So we grew up, and I grew up in South Side of Chicago around the Spanish community, and everyone around us had kind of the same story. Everybody was from Mexico, everybody was Catholic, right? And all the signs in church was in Spanish, and even up until fifth grade, we were taught in Spanish. So then we started making the switch over to English. So there was a big commonality. We all had shared values and shared community. And one of the things that I got stuck in when I tell my story of how I came into this profession was, this is my 29th year, but I think I actually started a lot earlier because when your parents are when they're immigrants and they're new to everything, everything is foreign to them. And, my parents, again, not knowing the language, having never gone to school. I mean, when we talk about education, my dad grew up on a farm. So you're talking about no schooling ever at all. So everything's foreign. And my real start in this business came actually helping them with their financial matters. And it starts with little things like, okay, how do you set up a phone? They didn't have phones in
Yeah,
Mexico. So getting a phone, and even though I wasn't the oldest child, somehow I got recruited. My older brothers didn't want to do it, and they're like, "No, no, tú hazlo. You do it." So
pass it down the ladder.
yeah, I got stuck being the one to help them. Okay, set up a phone, and then after setting up a phone, how do you pay the phone bill? Right?
Yeah.
So these little simple things. Okay, how do you get a bank account? Okay, now when it came time to when my parents wanted to buy a home, well, again, how do you pay for a home? How do you set up a mortgage? How do you do all these things? And then eventually, how does my dad start saving for retirement? Because regardless of anybody's status, whether you're new to this country, whether you're a migrant worker or my dad did construction, everybody needs to save and do financial planning, right? So I realized I was taking these steps and not knowingly early on in, as a youth, helping my parents plan financially. And my dad ended up being one of the first people I ever helped plan for retirement. And thankfully, he retired at 62, and now he just turned 86, and he's been retired ever since. So
Wow.
that's kind of
Wow.
how my career started. And it wasn't, he never made a lot of money. Uh, but again, he was able to do it because of that thought process, realizing no matter what your status is, we all have to plan. And one of the things I always talk about to people, especially in our community, is that, every Friday you see in our area, we call them the currency exchanges. You see them filled where everybody's cashing their check and they're sending money back, right? And they're always thinking about the now and they're never thinking about the tomorrow. And one of the things I learned from my parents early on is that you have to think about the tomorrow also, regardless of what's going on now. You can't just be living by the day, or my dad used to say, no más te preocupas viviendo por día. And you have to think about tomorrow. So that set into me early on. So when it came to when I was in college, I became a business major and realized, all right, I want to learn more about business. Um, the only thing is that I didn't really have an example because, my brothers were in college at the time. Actually, one of my oldest had already graduated, but I didn't know what the next steps were. So when it comes to graduation and you're a business major, it's pretty broad.
Yeah.
And one of the things I got recruited was there's always jobs in sales. So
Yeah.
I get recruited to do insurance sales. And one of the big things was okay, you speak Spanish. So the big thing is that the Hispanic population is growing and that it's underserved. So right away, if you can go and break into that market, you're going to be a huge success because there's a huge number in that. And man, that was a humbling experience. Um,
Yeah.
and one of my goals, having gone through it, is I try to tell everybody, never let yourself get pigeonholed again. Because one of the things I learned is that, yes, it is a big community. And even though we have the commonality of speaking Spanish, not everybody is ready yet.
Yeah.
So I worked that community and I realized that if all I ever did was just stay in the Spanish speaking community, I was going to go broke and I would never be a
Wow.
success in this business if
Wow.
I just focused on that. And I realized, why should I just focus on that and let other people focus on all these other opportunities and let myself, I didn't think that was very fair.
Yeah.
I was at a company and the whole company had, they were working with everybody. So why me as an advisor? I only get to speak with the Spanish ones. And typically, if you only speak Spanish, it means that your income level is typically lower. Your knowledge base is a lot lower, right? So you're limited on the scope of what you can do with someone whose income is lower and whose knowledge base is lower too. So
Mhm.
I never wanted to get myself limited. I realized if I open my doors up to everyone, that would allow me to do so much more in my career. So I expanded and didn't just worry about focusing in one area only,
One demographic, correct.
one demographic. And I don't think anyone should. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't work with that demographic. I'm saying is you have to be prepared to look at what makes a good, viable, book a business for you that's going to allow you to be successful. And the reality is looking at somebody who's willing and reasonable and able to work with you.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, Freddie. I think maybe in that day and age, the compensation models were aligned differently. Now we're seeing a lot more younger advisors do flat planning fees for a lower dollar amount. But like to your point, there's only so much to go around, and there's opportunities for other demographics for higher revenue, and so it just depends on the alignment. I think of the individual and the purpose, and so uh, but where so you started off in the insurance
Mhm.
and then transitioned to what? Like, I mean, once you're there and you're seeing, you notice that, it's going to get tight. Like, how did you push through that? Like, how did you kind of push that? I know you said that, I'm going to focus on other demographics, but that's still not easy because, there's different
Oh,
cultures, different this, different that. Like, a lot, like, how did you break through and overcome those challenges?
yeah. I mean, insurance is a part of the sound financial planning, right? It's one of the
Hmm.
cornerstones. But it also limits you because part of financial planning is being able to offer everything. Because you want to be a true fiduciary. So if you're limiting yourself to just one product category, it will be harder for you to really do the full scale of financial planning. So one of the things I realized, and this is why I encourage everyone, is to get your licenses in every category. Become a registered investment advisor, get your securities license, but be able to offer everything. Because then you're not just focusing on one category. Because if all I had was the insurance license, it was limiting me to just insurance and annuity products. So I wanted to expand beyond that
Mhm.
because in order to work and get to really know this business, you have to know every type of situation that a person can encounter because needs are met from all different types of categories.
Mhm.
So I expanded. I got my securities license, became a registered investment advisor, studied for the CFP, got that, and really broadened my horizon. But I also had to broaden who I was speaking with. Like I mentioned, I realized I had to get in front of as many people as possible. Because if you just narrow your demographic, you only learn those needs. The more
Mhm.
people you see, especially early on in your career, you know, some people say specializing in one area, but it's hard to know what you can specialize in if you don't see everything. So I always tell everyone getting in front of as many faces as possible is key because you have to learn this industry. This is not learned overnight. It's learned through experiences. And experiences also take time. You don't develop a relationship with somebody overnight. It takes years. It can take up to 5 years till you have a true, real relationship with
Mhm.
someone because you have to see them. If you think about it, your own situation, you're a new parent, my kids are graduating college, seeing those people's experiences over time helps. So it takes time and it takes an abundance of different experiences. Seeing people start, you're going to start saving for your daughter's college, right? I just got
Mhm.
done paying my kids off. So seeing those different experiences are key. Now, the struggle, and this is where I struggled, is when you start in this business, they tell you, and I had to do this, was they give you something, in my time, it was called the Project 100. Well, they're like, we don't want you to do cold calling. We want you to do something warm calls where you're going to write down 100 names of your friends and family and contact them. Well, when you grow up in the south side of Chicago and everyone's in the same demographic as you, right? That limited me back to just that Hispanic community. And I didn't know anybody with money. Nobody had these, nobody was an executive at a company. And I was young, right? So even my college friends, I tried to meet with their parents. And I remember sitting down with a parent's mine. His dad was a doctor. And they were polite. They met with me, but they're like, we're not going to give this 22-year-old our life savings just yet, right?
Yeah.
So I realized, okay, I'm not ready for that yet, but I have to put myself in a position. So I started working the educational market and I started working the 403B market. Getting
Mhm.
in front of school teachers. School teachers are double income typically. So if I can get in front of them and start working on that, it allowed me to see lots of people. Then I started getting into the 401k plans so I can see even more people. And then from that, it just kept expanding. So once I started seeing even higher ups in companies, I started getting into the high net worth space. But it took time to get there. It was a 10-year journey, but I just kept expanding my base, or I was getting in front of people. And once I got in front of people, I could start narrowing down who I wanted to work with. But that
Mhm.
took time. Like I said, it was a 10-year journey that by the time I was in my 30s, I was able to really focus more on the higher net worth space because I had done that space. I'd seen a lot of people and seen a lot of different situations. I had had my CFP, and I really had the experience. So I felt more confident because I knew what I was talking about. So I could handle the more complicated situations. And then I can really start cherry picking who I wanted to work with.
Takes time, repetition to get the
Mhm.
experience. I'm putting in the time, I get some repetition, and like life experiences, like you said, like one of those things that as a young planner, it's hard to relate to some older clients when you haven't lived it, and
Right.
now having lived through the birth of a child, and I can imagine definitely life experiences make that connection a little easier. So one of the things you overcame a lot. You've obviously are pretty successful right now. What's I want to highlight, a recent win, whether it's personal or professional, that you know you've come a long way. That's a
Right.
bit that's a win there. But like something practical, like a win that you can that people can take away.
Yeah. Our family situations right now are different between me and you, but I tell even people early on, if you're early in this career, and obviously you shouldn't be deterred from working with somebody and telling them, hey, I want to help you plan for retirement. I did at an early age. I help people plan for retirement. But it does start with you because even if you're not at retirement age and you're nowhere near retirement age, right? Doesn't mean you shouldn't work with someone and help them plan for retirement. But
Yeah.
you should be planning your own retirement, whether you're in your 20s or 30s, just like I did. Because
Hmm.
if you are taking those planning steps, you can walk the talk to say, hey, I'm taking these steps. Your daughter's young. You can start saving for her college now. I opened up a 529 for my oldest daughter, who's now 22, but I actually opened it for her when they first came out. I didn't even have kids yet when they first actually were introduced, and I started saving for them. I made my last tuition payment for her back in February. So she graduates this May in college with no debt. I fully funded her college, but that is something that I started back in 2002, 2001 when I opened up that account when 529s first came about. And she was born in 2003. So that planning back then, came to fruition now that I was able to cover her all expenses. And it was expensive. Uh,
Yeah.
I was proud that I could say I covered it. And I've got two more kids. My son's a junior in college, so he'll have no debt. And my daughter, my youngest, she's a senior in high school, but I have her college fully funded now. So wherever she chooses to go, I'll have that covered. But it all started from that early planning. But the same thing I was doing, I was telling the people I was working with to do
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. And now talk about experiences. You
Yeah,
can you can speak on behalf, like no better feeling than your daughter graduating college with
yeah,
the degree debt free. Talk
yep.
about like unheard of. And you put yourself like in your situation. I didn't get a 529, right?
No, no.
We didn't get a 529. I have student loans, paid through it. And so I mean, so much to unpack there. It's a huge
Yeah.
win.
And part of our culture too is we want each generation to do better than the next, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah, I did not have any college money. It was up to me. I had student loans when I graduated, right? But
Yeah.
I knew, for our parents, they wanted us to go to school. My parents didn't even have the opportunity, not only did we graduate high school, but went to college. This comes
Yeah.
from my parents who never even went to school at
Yeah.
all. Um, and I remember when I went to college, that was complete shock because that was common in our neighborhood. Nobody,
Yeah.
parents had gone to college. And then I go to college, and I remember my freshman, we had the dorm meeting, and people are, sharing their stories, like, say where you're from, and I was like, all right, and then where your parents went to school. And I was like, well, my parents didn't go to school. And they're like, oh, they didn't go to college? And I was like, no, no, no,
No, no.
no, they
Yeah.
didn't go to
Yeah.
school.
That brings us to a nice little transition where, you know, our culture, our upbringings are different than a lot of our clients, right? Especially if
Yeah,
you're working with a different demographic, right?
yeah,
Um, and you touched on it earlier where, you know, you knew that if you stuck to this demographic, you might not succeed if you didn't open the doors for other people. So how I want to challenge you. How has maybe your upbringing, your culture uplifted you in a way that it helped your financial planning because you see things differently or something of that sort? How has it really affected you in a positive way?
yeah. In a positive way, it's given me drive and desire.
Mm,
I always wanted better for myself because I know my parents wanted it for us. So
hmm.
if I couldn't, God forbid, from where my parents started to where I started, them coming here and me being raised here in this country where there's so much more opportunities. If I didn't take advantage of that, then shame on me.
Yeah.
So it always drove me to be better, want more for myself, and constantly improve. Obviously not just graduating school, but then even, getting my MBA and continuing on my education and always wanting to be the best I can be in my profession. I know when my parents worked, my mom was a homemaker. She wanted to be the best homemaker she can be for us. My dad, again, he did drywall. He took pride every day, in making sure he did the best job he could do. So I wanted to improve, but I wanted to do something that was different. Um, because my parents were limited in their idea. They didn't think about beyond that scope. My mom's like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to be the best homemaker. My dad, like, he would finish off that house and be like, all right, I'm going to do the best I can finishing this house because the next week I'm going to work on another house. But never expand beyond that, thinking about how do I get beyond just working on, a house? How do I
Hmm.
expand and get better than what I have now? And that's what I want to expand. I want to expand it for my kids because I thought in my career, when I started again, the insurance, then officing all these other products. So in my career, I decided because I spent a long time working with Fidelity and I was offering their investment products, right? And as planners, I realized me as an advisor, I know my clients better than anybody. So if I could expand my knowledge base, which eventually my goal was, I didn't want to just ship the investments off to somebody else. I wanted to handle that for them. So, what we specialize here in at Left Brain, one of the things I do is we pick all the investments for our clients. I'm not sending it out to anybody else.
Yeah.
We're doing individual stocks and bonds. So that's where my time is focused. And that's what I enjoy most in my career now, that I put myself in a position where I own my book of business. I control all the investments. Markets go up and down. I control that for clients. I don't have to explain, well, this is what happened, and it's because
Yeah.
the fund is doing this, but maybe we can change. No, I can tell them exactly why, and this is what I'm doing. So I own that for that client. Right
I
or
love
wrong,
that.
I own it. And
Yeah.
I can pass it on.
Yeah. And I think it kind of speaks to your childhood, right? Like, yeah, you helping your kid, your parents, right? Like you have to go outside the comfort zone because like if you don't do it, who's gonna do it,
Right.
right? So I love that. I love that perspective that you share. Thank you so much. But and it's so relatable to a lot of us. The drive, the hard work, the proving yourself, like
Well, we all have
some
that as the culture, but what I want to change, and
yeah.
one thing I love coming to here and talking to people, is I want to change the expectations. You remember
Mm,
that first conference we had, and it always stuck with me when they asked that question about the imposter syndrome, right? And like
hmm.
everybody raised their hand except me.
Hmm.
Never ever have I felt, that I wasn't qualified or I shouldn't be in the room, you know.
Yeah.
And I tell people, regardless of your last name, your heritage, your license and are the same as anybody else. We all take the same test. If you get the CFP, your CFP test was the same as everybody else's. Your designation, your credentials. So you have a right to be in that room. So we have to set that
Mm,
expectation level that we can do it. If other people are doing it, why can't we? When I was told, oh, you can't manage, a lot of people are telling you can't manage money for people. You don't have the time, the inclination, or the expertise. It's like,
mhm.
really? Because I've seen other money managers not do such a great job. Why can't I do that? Maybe I didn't go to an Ivy League school, but
Yeah.
I can do it. Our
There's
expectations need to be higher. Same reason when I talk, I go back to that never pigeon yourself hope to just one area. Set your
yeah,
expectations high, whatever that may be. We can't limit
love that.
ourselves.
I love that. I love that. And talk about not pigeonholing ourselves and to like the old ways, the old way our parents did things, you know. We like to we have a little segment right here. We're gonna practice what you preach, right? You kind of touched on it a little bit, right? Where you saved for your daughter, you paid for her college education, but let's get some transparency. How has some of your finances gone bad and gone good? Mind sharing a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the bad part is the struggle in the beginning.
Yeah.
When you get into this business, a lot of times your comp is variable, right? And you know, I was married for 23 years, so my spouse stayed at home, so she didn't work, so it was just my comp only. And having three kids, relying on my comp, it got variable, so we struggled. I remember having credit card debt, as my income was going up and down, depending on markets. And, between 2000 and 2010, guess what? The markets weren't all that positive. We had two market crashes in that decade. But I kept persevering. And I realized, if I just keep setting money aside and eventually get a plan to get out of this stuff, I will. Well, 29 years later, I turned 50 last year. And one of the things I talked about was being able to retire at 50. Well, I hit 50. And thankfully, if I wanted to retire, I could. I don't want to anymore. And a couple things happened that changed. My son took interest in this business. He's interned here twice. And the thought of him eventually taking over my book just excites me. And that was never an opportunity for me. But I just think about if he can start and learn everything that I did wrong and learn everything that I did well, he's going to be in such a great start, right? And I don't mind
Mhm.
giving him that great start. So now if I could stay on and have him take it over, plus I love what I do. My book of business,
Yeah,
is exactly where I want it to be. So now the thought of retirement is even though I can, I don't want to anymore.
that's
When I
awesome.
was working at Fidelity and thinking about, yeah, eventually, I'd want to get away from the rat race because every year you start and you have to do it again every year. I'm not in that position anymore. I have got my book controlled and so now I don't want to anymore, but having that planning and even having gone through a divorce to where I can still be financially independent and not have put a strain on my family. That always scared me, and obviously getting divorced is tough, but that I didn't strain the family. We're still able to pay for the kids' college. We're still able to, maintain our lifestyles. And I shared this at the last conference. When I turned 50, one of my goals was to eventually move my parents out of the south side of Chicago and buy them a house. And last year I was able to do that. So that's how I celebrated my 50th birthday, was moving them out and buying them a house where they can stretch out and no longer be crammed in a tiny little two-bedroom house with one bathroom, but being able to have their space and enjoy their retirement years, even if it's later in life, but finally get them. My dad spent all those time working on houses and never had a new house for himself. So the fact that they get to do that now gives me great pride.
Wow. That is literally, literally practicing what you preach, aligning your goals, saving up for it, and achieving them, and kind of to your point, not just starting from a previous, starting from when you first came into this industry, laying those nuggets down the line. So kudos to you. Congratulations, my friend.
Well, thank you. And sharing it. One of the reasons I
Yeah.
love Sarah is, we've had, I've met a lot of people through here and I've heard people talk. And one of the things I noticed about some of the people that have been in this business for a while, and I noticed this too, we've had great mentors, right? And,
Mm,
at the last conference, we had Luis Barrios, who's been in this industry a long time, talk about some of the mentors that he had, right? And one of the things he shared, and me and him have that in common, is we've both had good mentors. None of our mentors were Latino.
hmm
you know and it's funny that he mentioned that because I thought to myself, I was like, I've had great mentors, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have, you should just only have Latino mentors, but I'm in a position now where I can share back. So shame on me if I just say, well, I didn't have any Latino mentors, but I want to act as a mentor, not only to my son, which is the one I enjoy, a lot, that I can be his mentor, but to other people, going there and hearing the stories of people, and saying, hey, this is what I did. And I know a lot of people, we get so passionate. We're like, well, I want to help the Latino community, and saying, hey, you can do that. But guess what? One of the best ways you can help your Latino community is by being a success first.
Yeah.
So if you don't just focus in one area, because I do seminars pro bono where I can talk to the Latino community, I can take on those clients because I don't have to worry about making a living only on that segment,
Absolutely.
but I
Because
can still go back and give back, but you still have to be able to function. And if you function successfully, you can do so much more. Like I said, being able to donate to things like SARE, being able to, set up a scholarship back at my college where I graduated, donate back to them, help my family members out, donate to different causes because I was able to be a success. Now I can come back and give back. I can take, at SARE, one of the things I like to do is meet people, take them out for dinner, have drinks, and talk about
mhm.
stuff the way senior mentors did to me when I was early on in this career.
Yeah, I think that I commend you for leaving that door open, and people are going to be able to find you when they hear this podcast. So he's there. I can vouch for that. He'll be there for you whenever you need somebody. So definitely take advantage of that. And I also kind of relate to that. Like my first mentor wasn't a Latino.
Mhm.
And so it's just the industry we're at.
Right.
Latinos still make this much of this industry,
Yeah.
but having them all in one place, that said, it just opens the door for those conversations, right?
Right.
And Freddie, had you had a set conference 20 plus years ago, who knows? You maybe would have had a
I
Latino
could have had a
conf
Latino
member.
mentor. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you and Luis Barajas and others like you guys are paving the way for us, the next generation. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to kind of see. at SER. Um, but transitioning a little bit, we kind of talked about career journey, the money aspect, our culture aspect. You know, I had my questions, but curious to hear, is there one truth about money, our culture, or our profession that isn't heard about enough?
Yeah, one of the big misnomers is the assumption that, if you don't make a lot of money, you can't plan. And one of the things I will tell you, and this is from my 29 years of experience, it's not the amount of money you make, it's the amount of money you spend. So if you are making a lot of money, if you have a great salary, but if you are spending more than what you make, you will be in financial trouble,
Yeah.
even if you are making a good salary. But if you are a good saver and you don't make a lot, that goes a lot longer than having a big salary. So, and that's something that we can't do for people. And I try to tell people because people are like, oh, they just need education. They just need education on it. And it's like, okay, you can tell them that, but if they don't make the effort, because clients have to meet you, they have to take that step. And if they're not willing to do the sacrifice, and it is a sacrifice for some people, right? A little bit harder.
Hmm.
And you know what? It's a sacrifice for everybody, right? Because even if you're making a lot of money, you're thinking, oh, I can just spend and spend. But it is a sacrifice for everyone to say, all right, I am going to have to hold back. And we can meet with clients and we can tell them, and we can tell them over and over again. But if they don't take that step, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Until something clicks, or like we said, a life experience clicks, or it's like you went down too down to crawl yourself up. You have to start with the refresh. It's yeah, sometimes, and my mom would my parents said, "Tienes que vivirlo para creerlo." You're right.
Mhm.
You gotta live it to believe it. Sometimes.
Yeah, and I've seen it happen. Like I said, my dad never made a lot of money, did not speak the language. And again, if I was able to get him retired, anybody can do it. But it was a sacrifice. We
Yeah.
didn't go on fancy vacations. We didn't have, a nice place to, well, I don't want to say we didn't have a nice place to live, but we didn't have a big fancy house.
Yeah.
We lived in our means because that's what we can afford at the time. But yes, being that self-control depends on the individual. And thankfully, my parents had that. I didn't teach them that. They
Yeah.
had that. And that's what we have to be mindful of because I hear that a lot, especially like the Sarah people are that, they're like, oh, it's because, we don't have material in English, in Spanish for them and no, material doesn't matter. Collateral material doesn't matter because all these big companies they have Spanish hotlines, they have the material. It really comes down to the people have to want it too. Not saying don't educate them on it, but there has to be that want on their part.
Self
Yeah.
self
And some people
motivation.
aren't ready for it yet
Yeah.
but
And
maybe the
recognizing
next
it.
generation is,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. And talk about some people being ready for it and looking forward to taking on that challenge. The theme of this year's set is elevating one another, right? I'm curious to see if you are keeping an eye on someone from set or in this profession that you'd like to spotlight or and highlight their what they're doing.
Well, you, my friend, I would say I've been watching your career and seeing you as we have more conversations, from your original planning conversations to kind of get more in depth with people, things you're doing with the FPA that are honestly, I see how that you're taking that information that you hear from other successful advisors and you're implementing into your own career. You're watching the firm you work at, the owner of that firm, she has a successful practice, and I'm sure you're emulating the things that she's done because it's worked for her, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate that you're monitoring successful people, and 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 I appreciate it because we're in a different age now
Yeah.
where we're in a social media age. And there's a lot of stuff that gets posted. Anybody can post now, right? And
Absolutely.
we hear a lot of people posting stuff. And I see some of these people, and I was like, they're just spending time posting, but are they actually doing it? You
Yeah.
know? And even when we go to conferences, you have a lot of people that talk. We have professional conference speakers now, you know? And I watch the news and I always have like the business channels on and they always have these people speaking on there. And I was like, and you look at them and it's like, you're just a professional speaker. You're not actually practicing what you're doing. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that you're actually trying to find those people that are actually making it happen because a lot of times those aren't the ones that you see publishing or speaking because they're busy running a successful business.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I appreciate the recognition. And in hindsight, like I'm very fortunate where I'm at. I'm not in the business development like you were in insurance and early on in your career. The times have changed where a professional can come in here and help an advisor like Freddy service his book of business, do the financial planning. There's work that needs to be done that isn't just business development. And yeah, if maybe I was in business development, I would want to get my name out there in social media. Maybe I'm not a big social media guy to begin with, but maybe that's something I'd have to try out, you know? So yeah, I'm on the back end working. That's why I'm not posting.
Yeah, and working is where it's at because honestly, when you post and stuff, that gets you in front of zero people. Because the only people that are watching that are the other people in this industry.
Well, but you never know. Some people have had success with it. So we'll see where we'll see where my time lies and when it comes to that. But as we're wrapping up, I'm gonna give you a set of some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Just short and sweet. Let's
Okay.
see what comes out. All right. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What's one habit that has helped you succeed in your professional life?
Patience.
Mm,
You got to be patient in this industry. Markets go up and down. Clients, sometimes, like I mentioned, that thing when sometimes they're ready for changes, sometimes they're not. So you got to be patient because sometimes they have those life triggering events.
yeah.
Right. So you have to be patient. When I haven't been patient is when it's gotten me into trouble.
Got it. Wow. Patience. Yeah. I
Patience. And
can.
it's tough in this industry because everybody wants
Yeah.
it quick, right?
Yeah. You want to, yeah, that revenue's got to come in. Next one. What's a recent book, audio book, podcast, a resource that has kind of helped your thinking or right now?
Uh, I don't actually listen to any podcast. And as far as books go, I mean, one that always stuck with me was, the How to Win Friends, and I'm probably saying
Yeah.
the
Influence
title
people.
and influence people. And it stuck with me because it's all about how do you connect with somebody. And really, the way to connect with them is, I mean, obviously, we're doing this call and I'm doing more of the talking, right? But, typically when we're in a conversation, I always hate to hear more from people.
Yeah.
I've had people that I've known for quite a while that know very little about me,
Yeah.
but I know so much about them because, people, well, some people enjoy talking a lot about themselves and I enjoy hearing about them. So I always took that away and it's helped in this business because in the end, I'm here to serve them. So,
Absolutely.
so I should know more about them than they should know about me, really.
Hmm.
So what can I do for them? So I would say that one has always stuck with me. And I've taken and I've even taken the courses that are offered through because it became an institute as well.
Wow. That's good to know. We'll put the link in the resources. And then last one of the last questions. One piece of advice that you would give your younger self
Oh, to be patient.
to be
You Yeah. Because my younger
hey,
self was not patient.
because there's bills to pay, Freddie. There is bills
Yeah.
to pay.
Yeah. I mean, I remember trying to do everything all at once and then realizing that I couldn't. Getting frustrated at first, like I told you that example of,
Yeah.
I had met after college, I knew my circle back home didn't have, but people that I met in college, their parents were successful and get in front of them and being like, why didn't they want to work with me? Um,
Yeah.
well, because I wasn't ready yet to offer them,
Yeah.
good value yet. So being patient and still being persistent, but
Hmm.
being patient with that persistency also. Because a lot of times they tell you, oh, just be persistent, persistent, persistent. You have to
Hmm.
have value to offer. And, and
Yeah.
and value comes with patience. But during that time that you're getting patient, getting better.
Mm. That kind of leads into the last one. Like, I want you to finish my sentence. More Latino advisors would succeed in this profession if,
If they set their expectations higher.
ooh,
And again, a lot of times, again, when I go to this area and I
uh,
hear people talk about, yeah, wanting to work the Latino community. And I was like, you're doing the same thing I did. I pigeonholed myself, set your expectations higher, or limiting what they
and
want to do in their capabilities, where they just want to do education or they want to do certain things. And I said, you should open the door to everything and anything because they're capable of. I've met so many talented people throughout SARE, and they're capable of so much. They should, we should be wealth managers. We should be senior managers. We should be in every different role in this industry. You know, I chose
yeah.
to stay in the advisor thing because one, I talk too much. So as a, if I ever went into management, which I did early on in my career, yeah, you can't talk as much as I do. But I would like to see the Latinos expand their horizons and their expectations because our industry in every category we should have Latinos in. And if you think about it, in the financial services space, how many Latino managers do you see?
Not many,
No. How many Latino wealth managers do you see?
not many.
Yeah. Name a famous hedge fund manager or mutual fund manager that's Latino.
We're looking for them.
Exactly. Why aren't we there yet?
It's people like you paving the way. Let's go.
Well, so that's what I would like to see
Yeah,
is where we are
that's
covering
awesome.
every area of this industry.
I love that. I love that. And I want to take a second to like soak it all in and thank you for the wisdom you just dropped on us and challenges, right? And challenges you encouraging the next gen professionals. So I appreciate that. And thank you so much, Freddie.
Well, no, thank you for your time and always a pleasure chatting with you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to hearing you at the conference, possibly,
Yeah.
hopefully
Oh, I'll
you,
be there.
yeah.
If,
But
uh, if, if for those of you that are listening, and again, and whether you're new to this industry or whether you've been in this industry for a while, I enjoy meeting everybody and anybody. And I try to meet everyone at this conference. And I remember even the last conference, the last day, and I still saw some faces I hadn't met yet. So my goal is to try to meet everyone there. So if I
yeah,
haven't met you yet and you're at the conference, please stop by. I'd be more than happy to buy you a drink or buy you dinner that night. But I
yeah.
love chatting with everyone.
So thank you everybody for joining us in this episode of the Said Real Talk Corner. If you like it, subscribe to it where whatever platform you're hearing us or seeing us. And if you want to stay connected, if you want to talk to myself or Freddie, join our LinkedIn group page or go to setsummits.com and go to our website. There's the two resources where you can find us and connect us. And we hope to see you at the next episode and in Denver. Talk to you soon.